Please do not forget me here in Ukraine. I'm a minister of the gospel who is serving in Ukraine. I've given up my life to be here, to minister to the suffering. To those who are suffering, they are the suffering of the earth right now because they have an invader who has invaded their country and has driven out many of them from the east, from their homes, destroying their workplaces, their homes, their families, their friends, their cities. And they're suffering, and they need the gospel. And the other ones who are here, who live in Western Ukraine, need to hear the gospel because it's a threat on them and their life as well, this war. And they're ready to hear the gospel. But I need your support because I cannot work while I'm here. I'm on a volunteer visa. That means I depend on your support as Paul depended on the support of other churches while he was ministering to a certain place. I depend on your support. Please don't let me down. Step up, look in your heart and determine how much you want to give, and go to the links down in the description below and give. And I will pray and I will bless you before God. Now on with the lesson. This is video number 3 in our series, Salvation in the Gospel Accounts. We're in the Gospel according to Matthew, and we are in chapter 16 today, verse 25. But we're going to read the context as usual, because it's so important to know what exactly is the context of this saying. So we're first going to read the verse, then we're going to read the context. The verse is Jesus speaking, saying, "For whoever desires to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." And you say, hold it, I heard that in the last video. Yes, you did. This is, again, Jesus telling us the same thing, which means we need to pay attention to what he says and how he says it. So let's go back and read where he says that in the previous video, in chapter 10. So he says here, 10:39, Matthew 10:39, "He who finds his life will lose it. And he who loses his life for my sake will find it." And here it says, "For whoever desires to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." So the last part's the same. Whoever loses his life, he who loses his life for my sake will find it. That's identical there. But the first part's different. He who finds his life. The other one will lose it. He who finds his life. This is for whoever desires to save his life. Not find, save. Will lose it. Do you desire to save your life? You say, hold on a minute. Isn't that why I became a Christian? So that I can be saved? Yeah, that introduces a very interesting conundrum, doesn't it? Did you accept Jesus in order to save your life? Aha. This is very interesting, isn't it? Because this says whoever desires to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So when you approach Christ, are you approaching him in order to save your life? And you say, I think I smell a herring, a red herring, in the word life. What life? What is that referring to? Life. All right, so I've just looked up the Greek of this passage because it's ambiguous in the English translations. They have mistranslated words. So when it says, for whoever desires to save his life, it is not life, it's soul. Psyche. It would be zoe or bios. But it's psyche. Okay, so this word life is not accurate. I want to explain a little bit. There are 3 words that are usually used in this situation. And one of them is pneuma, the other one is psyche, the other one's air, where we get the word air from. But life is zoe or bios. Bios is social life and the life within a society among other people, whereas zoe is organismic life, the organism. But these three words have to do with the other element that animates. So air is an inanimate breeze, whereas pneo is forceful respiration. It's involuntary respiration that your body does whether you want it or not, whether you think about it or not. But psyche is intentional. It's something inside us that we intentionally do. So it's not something that just happens. It's something we intentionally do. The breathing that we intentionally do. Psyche. So the psyche refers to the soul by implication, whereas the pneuma refers to the spirit which causes our body to breathe involuntarily, but is still not done just de facto by the body as an organism, but by some other force that is not us, and that's spirit. So soul is psyche, and spirit is pneuma, and then air, A-E-R, is just an inanimate breeze. So in this verse is pneuma, your voluntary breaths of life. Okay, here's the translation of this verse. For whoever in the case may be determining the voluntary breaths of his soul, of him, to save, he will completely destroy it. But whoever, in case may completely destroy the voluntary breaths of the soul of him, because of me, will find it. It's difficult. Now let's look at the context. Now that we know what it's talking about, it's talking about the voluntary breaths of the soul that are the soul. Context, verse 24 through 28. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, that intends to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. That word deny is a very interesting word. It's made of three words, and it's the apo again, which is completely or from off of, and then it has a, which is a negating particle on the beginning, and then reo, which is to say or to speak. And so it has this sense of not saying, like completely not saying, like a vow of silence. Let him take a vow of silence of himself and take up his cross and follow me. As a sense of not expressing your opinions, not expressing what you think about the situation, but being silent, not just in mouth and mind, being silent, taking up your cross and following Jesus. The cross is the instrument of execution, of your execution. Not Jesus's, it's your execution, it's your cross, not his. Take up his cross. Let him, if anyone, let him take up his cross and follow me. Not take up my cross and follow me. let him take up my cross and follow me. It doesn't say that. If anyone, let him take up his cross and follow me. So then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone intends to come after me, he must completely refrain from speaking. He must himself completely refrain from speaking, because it's got that middle voice. He must himself refrain himself. He must himself refrain himself completely from speaking. And take up his cross and follow me. Whoever, in the case that he may intend the voluntary breaths of his soul, of him, to save, he will completely destroy from off of it. Completely destroy it. But whoever, in the case, may completely destroy the voluntary breaths of his soul, of him, because of me, will find it. Okay? Verse 26, for what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Now, interesting they use the word soul. Is it the word soul? Yes, it's the same word, psuche. So they translate it life up here, then they translate it soul down here. That's how sloppy they are. They're not even keeping things in context. They're not even recognizing context when they're translating. This is the New King James, which means it's probably the same in the King James. Well, I've got the King James right here in front of me. Yeah, they're very sloppy. That's where they get it from, King James. And they probably got it from Tyndale. And Tyndale was not qualified to translate. And they wanted to stop him from doing that. It was illegal. They wanted to arrest him for that, but they ended up catching him and burning him at the stake as a criminal who fled and further broke that same crime. So it says, for what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own voluntary breaths of soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his voluntary breaths of his soul that are his soul? What can you give? If you lose that, what can you give to get it back? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. That means good and bad. He will dispense justice with his holy angels. Assuredly, I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Now, look at what verse 27 says, according to his works. Again, we have the declaration that judgment is not according to our beliefs. It's not according to what we believe or our faith. It's according to our works. It says point blank here, he will reward each according to his works. And this is the older English, which means it's not always positive reward. A reward can be positive or negative. We think of a reward as something positive, for something positive you've done. But it doesn't mean that. And especially when we read that word in the Bible. It can mean a reward that's according to whatever you did. That's what it means. So if you did evil, you will receive a reward for that, which is eternal punishment. If you do good and righteousness, you will receive a reward for that, which is eternal life. Jesus and Paul both say that point blank. Romans 2, Paul says that. Matthew 25, Jesus says that. Sheep and the goats. But go read Romans 2. Paul says it point blank too. As if you need Paul in order to validate Jesus. Some of you think you do. Because you walk around thinking Paul contradicts Jesus. Paul didn't contradict Jesus. You contradict Jesus by misreading Paul, as Peter said even back then men were doing. So what is this salvation? It's very peculiar, isn't it? Is it eternal salvation? Well, based on the context, I would say yes, because verse 27 starts out with for, meaning because of this, these things before that I said, because the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels to judge everyone, these things before that I said that you must pay attention to. If anyone intends to come after me, let him shut himself up. Let him stop espousing his opinions and creating opinions in his heart. And you think you have the right to. This is one of the heresies in the church today, is that every Christian has a right to form their own opinion. You do not have your right to form your own opinion. Even I don't form my own opinion. This determines my opinion. And I cannot look at this and say, well, I think this says this and I think this says that, because that's putting my opinion above this. My opinion must shape itself to what this says, not the other way around. And that's where all of these men go into error. And you've been trained to do the same. But if you watch the videos here on the channel, you will be trained to stop doing that. Like we did right here. I dug into the Greek for you. You don't need to know Greek. I'll dig into the Greek for you. I'll tell you what it means. And then we can hear together what God's testimony really says. And then we can together say, that's what we believe. I don't have an opinion on it. That's what I believe. That's not my opinion. That's what the scripture says. And I believe that. And I refrain from having an opinion, just like this passage says, that I shut my mouth completely. I shut my opinion-making device in me completely. And I take up my instrument of execution of myself and I follow Christ. Verse 24. If you may intend to save your voluntary breaths of your soul, remember what soul is, 3 faculties, your intellect or opinions. If you are intending to rescue those and save those and preserve those, if you are intending to save and rescue and preserve your emotions, I have a right to feel that way. You'd better think twice. Part of the soul, the voluntary breaths of the soul. If you intend to rescue, save, preserve your plans, your intentions, how you want to live your life, how you want to do this and be this and go here, and you'd better think twice. Because that's the third faculty of the soul, the psyche. The voluntary breaths, which are the soul, are made up of opinions and emotions and plans or intentions. And you have to completely destroy those. You have to completely destroy your opinions. You have to completely destroy your emotions, and you have to completely destroy your plans for your life. And then you will find your soul, your true soul. When you do that for Jesus, you do it because of Jesus, you will find your true soul. So is it eternal salvation he's talking about? He's talking about the new creation. You're going to be saved from the old creation, the old man. And you're going to find the new creation, the new man. 2 Corinthians 5:17. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. That's what it's talking about. But you can intellectually grab that all you want. But until you actually do this, that Jesus says, you do not have that. You only have some sort of idea about it. And yet your opinions are still preserved and protected, and your emotions and your plans. And you have not killed those. You have not destroyed those completely off from you. And taken up your instrument of execution of you, your cross that you are crucified on, as Paul says in Galatians 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. That's what this is talking about, and Paul understood it. He didn't only understand it, though, he lived it. Have you lived it? Have you done it? If you don't know if you've done it, you haven't done it. You will know when you've done it. You must do it. It's intentional. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.